The article says this is the strongest argument for veganism, so let's give it a go. The first premise explains that cruelty is harming animals unnecessarily. I disagree with that right away. Even vegans seem to disagree with that, because they kill animals unnecessarily for their own interests and they wouldn't call it cruelty. The second premise is consumption of animal products harms animals. I object to that. The author of the article conflates consumption of animal products with treatment of animals in the process of procuring those products. The two are not one and the same. The third premise is that consumption of animal products is unnecessary. But we must ask, unnecessary for what? The author seems to talk about survival or health. For the sake of the argument, let's grant that. But it will be equally unnecessary to consume exclusively plant-based products. And if that's not granted, then vegans have to defend the premise and explain the whole thing about necessities. And some vegans realize that's too much of a trouble.
What problem do these words pose? The problem they pose is that they open up lines of attack for carnists that could be avoided. Take unnecessary. If I say, we should avoid unnecessary suffering, as nice as this sounds, the imprecision of the word unnecessary opens up lines of attack like this. Well, we all cause unnecessary suffering. Do you drive a car or take public transportation? I doubt transit is necessary for your survival. What about luxury items? Do you own a single luxury item, or do you only own the bare bones that are necessary for you to survive? This is a completely valid objection, as much as we may be annoyed to hear it because it hits like a gotcha.
And the conclusion is that we shouldn't consume animal products. I don't think the argument is sound, because the author conflates two different things in the second premise, and presumably vegans will reject the first premise. The third premise is redundant, and if we play a little and change the second premise, we can reach a conclusion that we shouldn't consume plant-based products. The rationality guy tried to steelman the argument, but he stumbles.
Here it is. Premise 1. We shouldn't harm sentient beings unnecessarily. Premise 2. The deliberate acquisition of products from sentient beings harms sentient beings. Premise 3. The deliberate acquisition of products from sentient beings is unnecessary. Conclusion. Therefore, we shouldn't deliberately acquire products from sentient beings.
He acknowledges that consumption of animal products doesn't harm animals, but for some reason he thinks that purchase of animal products harms animals.
Premise 2. The consumption of animal products harms animals. On a literal reading, this premise is just false. It's not the consumption of animal products that causes harm, but rather the process of acquiring the animal product that, more often than not, causes harm. When a hunter cooks and eats the deer, he's not harming the deer. No, he harmed the deer and the deer's kin, if it had any, when, in an act of pure masculinity, he equipped himself with an incredibly powerful and accurate weapon, found a safe space, and pulled the trigger from hundreds of feet away. Likewise, when someone, such as myself, cooks and eats an egg, I don't harm the chicken. No, I harm the chicken when, in an act of pure masculinity, I paid someone else, millions of feet away, to harvest the chicken period for me. To get back on the rails, the question is, does the deliberate acquisition of products from sentient beings harm sentient beings? At a glance, the answer is obviously yes. When I buy a pint of milk, I pay for an industry to harm sentient beings.
And as we argued many times on this channel, that's not true. You can logically have purchase of animal products without quote-unquote paying for harm or harming animals or whatever. Just like vegans who made the original argument, he conflates two different things. The first and the third premise suffer from the whole unnecessary thing. Even he criticized it in the video.
Alright, well, I reject premise 1, and for two reasons. Let's spell out the first. As vegans are well aware, vegan diets raise many moral questions of their own, and one such question is this. What does it mean to say that the deliberate acquisition of a product is necessary? Necessary for what? To again quote Dogat, if it is wrong to hurt chickens for meat, is it wrong to hurt mice and moles while harvesting crops? If it is wrong to harm workers in the production of meat, isn't it wrong to harm workers in the production of tomatoes? If it is wrong to use huge quantities of water for meat, isn't it wrong to use huge quantities of water for almonds? So again, the question is, what does it mean to say that a product is necessary? Is it to live? And if so, to what degree? Is it to live a fully healthy life, or just to live at the cost of, perhaps, a reduction of optimum performance and lifespan? Or at least a reduction in some of the foods we enjoy that are technically vegan, such as almonds. Like, seriously, where's the line here? And more importantly, how does one justify this line?
So his supposed Stillman doesn't really help. I would say that vegans jumped the gun by calling this the strongest argument for veganism.